Every second of your waking life, your brain is bombarded by sensory information. It acts as a high-volume processing node, absorbing temperatures, sounds, body language, and environmental variables in a constant, overwhelming torrent. This diagram illustrates a biological constraint. The nervous system processes 11 million bits of data per second, yet conscious awareness handles only 40. To survive this bottleneck, automated filters rapidly discard the vast majority of reality, sending a curated trickle to your conscious mind. We routinely assume that radical indoctrination involves coercing the weak-minded or the intellectually desperate. We treat it as a failure of intelligence. In reality, indoctrination is a highly precise structural exploit. It bypasses intelligence entirely, targeting the specific biological sorting codes that allow high-functioning individuals to process the world. Systematic brainwashing operates exactly like an operating system exploit, engineered to hijack the human reality testing matrix. This flowchart maps the exploit. It relies on a highly predictable three-phase sequence of inputs designed to systematically crash your analytical processing centers. Historical data shows that lethal cults rarely recruited the broken. They actively targeted systems engineers and medical scholars and corporate executives, individuals with highly organized, complex cognitive structures. Rational conviction and baseline sanity are fragile biochemical settings. Given the correct sequence of environmental inputs, those settings can be forcefully overwritten. By mapping the precise physiological inputs required to execute the sequence, we expose the underlying architecture of modern behavioral control. Phase 1 targets the brain during states of elevated neuroplasticity. This malleability naturally occurs during stressful life transitions, a sudden job loss, relocation to a new city, or the end of a long-term relationship. Cults deploy a tactic commonly known as love bombing. They flood the target with overwhelming affection, constant praise, and unconditional validation. Looking at this neural schematic, we see the physiological result. It triggers a massive neurochemical cascade of dopamine and oxytocin. The brain quickly adapts, developing a strict biochemical dependency, craving continuous input to maintain the high. Normal human social bonding takes years of gradual trust building. This technique manufactures a synthetic, immediate substitute that feels indistinguishable from genuine connection. To sustain this manufactured high, the brain willingly lowers its defensive cognitive barriers. Critical reasoning is deprioritized in favor of chemical maintenance. Phase 1 succeeds by converting a previously independent, rational actor into a heavily addicted, dependent data receiver. To maintain an accurate perception of reality, the human brain requires constant external calibration. We test our beliefs against a diverse array of independent reference points. Tactical isolation serves a strict mechanical purpose. The controlling group systematically cuts the subject off from these diverse environmental inputs. This illustrates the collapse of the reality testing matrix. Structural connections to family, peers, and independent media are permanently severed. With other pathways destroyed, the group constructs a perfectly sealed, closed-loop information system as the sole arbiter of truth. Without access to external validation to correct internal processing errors, the brain begins to warp. The most extreme falsehoods become plausible because there is no counterdata to challenge them. This exploits an evolutionary vulnerability. For early humans, exclusion from the tribal consensus meant physical death by starvation or exposure. Our biology is hardwired to prioritize social consensus over objective reality. We willingly trade the truth for the perception of safety. Eventually, the group introduces radical tenets that directly clash with the subject's prior moral identity. This generates severe mental friction, known as cognitive dissonance. Processing and resolving this constant logical contradiction demands an immense amount of biological energy. It is an exhausting, unsustainable state for the nervous system. This visual represents how the cult solves the friction with thought-terminating cliches, engineered logic gates bypassing critical thought. Phrases like reason is a trap act as firewalls. The analytical mind is routed into an infinite loop until it crashes. Faced with endless dissonance, the brain makes a physiological choice. It shuts down its reality testing faculties completely to conserve energy and stop the pain. Indoctrination never destroys the intellect. It installs a malicious script that forces the intellect to ignore its own internal alarms. History provides empirical evidence of this total reality override. The 1978 Johnstown event demonstrates the terrifying absolute of this exploit. Over 900 members of the People's Temple relocated to this remote settlement in Guyana. They were surrounded by dense jungle, achieving total physical separation from standard society. When analyzing mass casualty events, the public heavily assumes the victims were driven by paralyzing fear or held at gunpoint. The forensic evidence points elsewhere. The calm, grouped proximity of the bodies indicates a distinct lack of frantic escape attempts. Audio recordings from that day reveal a chilling tranquility among the members. The three-phase conditioning was entirely successful. It bypassed their cognitive defenses and successfully uninstalled the primary biological instinct to survive. Once the reality testing matrix is overwritten, physical death is no longer feared. It simply becomes the logical output of corrupted code. The physical architecture of the traditional cult compound has now been completely replaced by a decentralized digital delivery system. This map compares the mechanics of a physical group with the structural flow of digital information. The same three-phase sequence of inputs is now delivered through the infrastructure of social media. In this model, the role of the charismatic leader is mapped directly onto predictive algorithms. The AI does not need to preach, it simply observes and reacts to your specific psychological vulnerabilities in real time. The geographical isolation of a jungle settlement finds its digital equivalent in the filter bubble. Both environments serve the same mechanical goal: preventing dissenting data from reaching the subject's processing centers. Phase 1, love bombing, is executed through high-frequency variable rewards. While a cult leader uses verbal praise, a digital platform uses the variable surge of likes, shares, and customized notifications. Because these interactions occur hundreds of times a day, they maintain the same state of hyperneuroplasticity and biochemical dependency seen in historical cult members. The algorithm completes Phase 2 by silently curating the feed. It automates isolation by progressively filtering out independent reference points, leaving the user inside a closed-loop system where the algorithm becomes the only source of truth. To maximize engagement, the feed frequently triggers Phase 3 by presenting high outrage content that contradicts the user's existing identity. This forces the brain to resolve the dissonance through critical thought, or, more commonly, adopt the platform's pre-packaged cliches to stop the friction. Modern social media algorithms function exactly as automated indoctrination engines, executing the three-phase exploit at a massive global scale. We are living in the era of the global distributed cult. This decentralized architecture silently harvests your autonomy. It replaces independent analytical thought with calibrated triggers designed by machines. Objective reality fractures as a result. Society is split into millions of customized, completely isolated simulations where logic and external data can no longer penetrate. The next time you consume digital content and feel a surge of intense ideological rage or a sense of absolute, unshakable certainty, stop and examine your own biology. True cognitive autonomy requires a constant, uncomfortable practice. You must always ask yourself if that deep conviction is truly your own, or just a program successfully installed by a machine.